Hello, I'm Anthony. Welcome back to the Acoustic Agent Expert Series. Today we're going to take a look at one of the biggest kits in Groove Agent, and it's called, I kid you not, the Kit. One of the better expansion pack names you've ever come across. Here it is. And we're going to use this preset called Watch Closely to get me to a sound that's already kind of in my head. So this is, I've got a song idea just forming, and I want a really subtle kind of understated drum sound. I know exactly what I want, and I'm going to use this template today to show you the process that I'm going to go through to get to that stage, and then I'll lay a couple of guitar lines down right at the end of the episode to show you the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Now this is one of my go-to kits in Groove Agent. I'm not going to make any more puns about the terrible expansion pack name. Let's just kind of move on, because I think the samples in this kit are really strong. It is pretty hefty though, and as you'll see shortly in the mixer, there are means by which we can reduce the processor overload on this thing if it's pushing your system a little bit too hard. But if you're running an underpowered system, you might want to start thinking about even maybe dropping the bit rate on this kit. Anyway, let's presume you've got a big hefty machine to handle all of this stuff. And I'm going to start right at the beginning. I've already had a bit of an audition for what I'm going to do with this thing, but I haven't actually recorded anything yet. This is a completely empty project. So I'm going to step you through all the processes that I go through to get to the sound that I want. And the first thing that I need to do is pick a groove. Now, I generally tend to like to start with just kick, snare and hats. Anything more than that right at the very beginning is too overwhelming for me. So I'm going to try to find a groove that's just got those things, and then we can go from there. So here's the starting point. I found a groove, complexity 9, in this preset, Watch Closely. Kick, snare and hats. Nice and simple. Let's get it going. And immediately there are certain things that I know I'm going to want to change. I don't want that. Don't want the cymbals. Let's turn them off. It's also a little bit active for me at the moment. I'm right at the beginning of the song here. I want kind of intro pace, and a really nice thing to try every time is just going to half time. You see it's really stripped that rhythm down. It's brought it down to its bare essentials. And now this is getting really close to the general feel that I want when I'm going to start thinking about picking the guitar up, but I'm not quite there yet. Because I just want to introduce a little bit of swing. I want to try introducing a little bit of swing to see if that helps. Immediately making my shoulders move. Let's try going more. No. Subtle is best. I think I was happy with my initial stab. Somewhere around 10%, tiny little bit of swing. Just bringing everything a little bit more shoulder-ified. And that's a really good starting point. That's going to be basically the backbone upon which I'm going to start building this groove. Now I'm going to go in and fine-tune those kick, snare and hat sounds in the context. We want to really examine the kit, so we want to stretch some of the features that it's got that other kits don't have. But before I do anything at all, I'm going to drop it onto a MIDI track. There we go. Now I don't have to worry about follow transport or any of the internal controls. I've got access from within Cubase, and we can have a look at it as well. Let's have a look at the rhythm. Now very often at this point you might be tempted to immediately create yourself a drum map. I'm not going to, for reasons that will become obvious fairly shortly. I'm going to do a little bit of shenanigans with the hats to get a few more articulations, and just for the time being I want to keep it in key edit mode. But I also want to see the foot data just in case there is any. And there is. So let's get that open, because that's going to be controlling the open and closed hi-hat sound. So we've got a really good understanding now, an impression of what's going on. We can see the kick, the snare and the hats. Something else we just need to take care of very quickly is to ensure that our pads and instruments are on different channels. So I'm basically going to make sure that pads talk on the pad channel, instruments talk on the instrument channel. Now if I press a key, we're only hearing the drum sound rather than the drum sound and the pattern. We absolutely don't want to do that. So now I can interact with the keyboard and I'm only hearing instrument sounds. Okay, that's our basic pattern set up, but I also want to take a couple of minutes to create myself a little fill as well. So I want 4 bars of completely standard pattern, but I want to get 4 bars that are going to end with a fill as well. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes browsing through the various fills to see what I want. And there's a couple of ways that we can do this. The easiest way is to manually engage each of the fills. And then you're going to hear them a couple of times, more or less immediately, and you can audition them this way. But it can be a little bit disorienting if you're only hearing fills. So another method that I quite often like to use is to go to main mode, turn autofill on, disengage all the buttons, and have autofill play every 4 bars. So it's going to be playing each of these fills in the proper context. You can press play, start listening to the groove. At the end of the 4-bar pattern, when Groove Agent gets to at the end of bar 4 here, you can hear it play the fill, and then you can disengage fill 1, fill number 2. Now, it doesn't automatically update. This is still going to play fill number 1. It has to get round back to the beginning of the pattern, and the next time it plays the fill, it'll play fill number 2. Here we go. There we go. So obviously that gives you a much better context for how it fits into the groove, but it's going to stretch the entire process out because you're going to get a little bit bored for those 3 bars waiting for the fill to come back round. So a mixture of those 2 techniques is going to get you to where you want to be. I'm just going to choose fill 7, and because this is the currently selected groove, I can now drag that into the main interface, and that's going to contain fill 7. Glue those 2 parts together, and now I've got an 8-bar pattern with a 1-bar fill at the end. Okay, that's the notes taken care of. Now let's drill into the kit itself and start looking at some of its idiosyncrasies. I'm going to get this thing running in the background and basically just bring the volume up and down as I need to basically demonstrate different features. Kick first. So on the beta, we've got this kick articulation option. And I like soft felt. I really want an understated, gentle kind of thudding groove here. So wherever I've got the options to choose soft articulations, you're going to see me want to go that way. This is the advantage of having an idea already in your head. When you start to audition all of these sounds, you know where you're heading, or at least you know where you're trying to head. It's absolutely not essential. You know, very often I have no idea where I'm going and I'll use the sounds to inspire me. That's not the case here. I kind of know what I'm heading for. Got a similar kind of thing going on with the snare. On the articulation, we've got this option for muffled, but we've also got towel. Let's get the groove running again. So that's really dulled the snare. And there's the natural sound. I like that a lot. Hi-hat's next. Now most of this stuff is standard. You'll have seen all of these options in other kits, so we won't spend long here. I'm just going to choose my open level. Yeah, let's keep it quite tight. So at the moment we've got 2 different hi-hat articulations. We've got the A sharp 0, which is hi-hat shank, And we've also got this G#1, which is the pedal. So we're not playing any hi-hat tip notes, and that's what I want to change. I want to bring some of these shank notes up to the tip level. And there's any number of ways that you can do this. You could literally just pick the notes that you want and move them up to F#1, which is going to be the hi-hat tip. We've also got hi-hat tip closed on A#1. So I'll basically throw some different notes into each of those articulations. But the way that I'm going to do it is to use the logical editor. Now there's a preset in here. I think it comes bundled as part of the standard stuff, but I've moved all of the presets around into my own folders. And there's a preset called select every third note at pitch. Let's have a look at it. If the type is equal to note, and we're using the last event algorithm, so you can see that the condition is every other event, and we've got an event counter. So even though the condition is called every other event, it's actually every third event because the event counter is set to 3. And what I want to do is set the pitch equal to whatever the current note is. Now this shank is at A#0. And so if I deselect all of the notes and then click apply, now it's selected every third note. This stacks, by the way. So if I had some notes already selected and clicked apply, then you can see it doesn't destruct the original selection process, so you can kind of stack them together. But I just want nice and simple, select every third note. Now that I've got all that data, I can move all of those up to F#1. Simple as that. Now I can go back to my original pattern and do exactly the same thing again. Reopen the logical editor. Let's set the event counter to 2, just for giggles. So now we're going to select every other note. Click apply, there they all are. And let's move all of those up to A#0. So now we've spread the hi-hats across 4 different articulations, admittedly randomly, but at the moment I'm just looking for kind of sonic inspiration. I just want to hear all of the different articulations, see what they sound like. Yeah, I really like that. It's just added a little bit of extra variance to the hi-hats. Okay, so that's the structure of my groove finished. It's now completely reasonable for me to assign this to a drum map. So the next time I go into this editor, it's going to collect all of the notes together and I can see exactly what I'm doing. Now the kit has a few different settings in the mixer, so let's have a look at some of those. Something that we've not dealt with explicitly in this series, so I'll mention it here, is that we've got an auxiliary send on the snare. So you can see that auxiliary 2 is at a non-zero level. Let's see what we've got over there. We've got a vintage compressor on the snare. So you need to know that this stuff's here because it's colouring the sound. Now you might choose to throw all of this away and deal with all of your effects outside of Groove Agent, totally fine. But the fact is that Groove Agent can handle a lot of this stuff for you. If you want to, you need to know it's here. Let's see what it's doing to the sound. So it's very heavily compressing the snare when I cranked it up there. And that's it, basically taken out. Now it goes without saying, particularly with compressors, that a lot of this stuff can be really subtle and dialed back to the point where it's almost impossible to identify. But by the same token, it's worth spending 5 minutes just wandering through these settings and deciding whether or not it's bringing anything to the sound. The important thing is to know that it's there, that we've got the auxiliary send on the snare bus. It's colouring the sound. You need to know why. Similarly with the kick, we've got an EQ. Let's have a listen to that. So you can see it's heavily attenuating this 500 Hertz, basically just pulling all of that mud stuff out of the way. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do with the kick. I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, when we get to the stage where we're really dialing in the sound, probably at the end of the songwriting process, I might pay more fine attention to all of these different settings. At the moment, I'm just having an overview, finding out everything that's going on. Just a quick note about this green button here. Wherever you see on-off buttons underneath mute, and this is a kit thing, specifically the kit thing, you can turn entire channel strips off. This is basically to reduce CPU overhead, so it's like a super mute. It unloads the samples. But we don't need to worry about that today, so I'm going to leave it on. Let's have a look at the reverb and mix channel. So this particular kit has its own completely dedicated reverb strip. This is separate from the room and overhead strips, which are there. Yep, you can hear that extra reverb breathe with that on. Again, choose whether or not you want it. Most important thing is to know it's there. Similarly, on the master kit mix, we've got a drive knob, tube saturation. You can drive the entire kit. Now in this particular case, because I want the start of this song to be subtle and muted and gentle, I'm not going to want a lot of tube saturation. So I'm actually going to pull the drive all the way down. I don't want any saturation on this sound to start with. And at this point I'm good to go. I'm going to pick up the guitar now and use this groove to start coming out with some ideas. So I want to save this. Just call it temp for now until I've decided what my song's going to be called, and then we'll come back and see it in action. So very enjoyable half hour later, we've got a couple of guitar lines laid down. Now we can hear this drum rhythm in context with what will ultimately, this song's going to be called River Song. Let's hear its birth. So hopefully that's given you some sort of insight into Groove Agent as both a technical tool and a creative device. I'm only interested in writing songs. Everything else, all of these deep dives that I do, picking out the tiny technical intricacies of how Groove Agent works, all of that is to understand how it's made it sound and how I can best use it to help me write songs. That's all I care about. Hope you enjoyed this series. Please hit the like button if you did. Thanks very much for watching.